Hi all, Michelle Visser on the Solely Rested channel. I wanted to take a second today to talk to you about second ferment kombucha. I just got back from a walk with Bixby and I haven't yet had any kombucha for the day, so I'm craving it. And I went down to our root cellar, which is where I keep my second ferment bottles if I'm not going to be drinking them right away, just because it gets them out of the way of the kitchen, and I can put them in a cooler down there, so if they get extra fermented for any reason, I have no worry of exploding, any problems. Anyway, so I went down to the root cellar to get myself some kombucha, and I pulled up my kiwi rooibos. I don't know why my tongue sometimes gets twisted on the weirdest things. Kiwi rooibos. And I saw this wonderful layer of yeast on the bottom, and that made me think, oh, I need to explain to you guys about how and why you want to look for that layer of yeast. Now, on my way up the stairs, I gave it a really healthy shake, so I'm not sure, I'll let it sit there a minute. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the yeast forming on the bottom, but it's good to shake up your second ferment because you can then mix up everything and get the yeast more active. You see, in the second ferment, your purpose is twofold. One, you want to give an amazing flavor to your kombucha. And two, you want to keep feeding the yeast that was already doing well and active in your first ferment. You want to let it keep going because the more your yeast is happy, the more carbonated your drink will be and the healthier it'll be for you. You see, the sugar that you add to your second ferment, whether you add just plain old refined sugar or maple syrup, my favorite, or you can add honey to your second ferment. You can add fruit, fresh fruit. You can add frozen fruit. You can even add just fruit juice. In fact, some people have told me they add jam and jelly. I haven't tried that one. But any source of sugar, because that sugar is feeding the yeast that's already in your kombucha and keeping it active. And when the yeast eats the sugar, it creates two things. There's two byproducts of the yeast eating. First of all, it creates lactic acid, and second, if it creates carbon dioxide. Now, the carbon dioxide, you probably have a pretty good idea of why you want carbon dioxide in your kombucha, because that creates that wonderful bubbly carbonation that I personally love. And the lactic acid is something that not everybody is always aware of why it's so important, but it makes your kombucha so good for your gut health because lactic acid helps fight things like irritable bowel syndrome. And it actually, this is kind of crazy. Yeast creates lactic acid, right? But then lactic acid goes on to cure yeast infections in some people who drink kombucha. It's a crazy thought, right? But it basically is improving the microbiome of your gut. And we do so many things in our society today that is just destroying our gut health. So drinking kombucha and the lactic acid that's built up in it is just one simple, delicious way you can help your gut health. So let's see if the yeast has come down and settled some. You can see it a little bit there. See the little powdery looking substance? There's a little piece of kiwi too. But you can see the little bit of powdery substance around the bottom. You get a really nice layer of it that you have no trouble seeing after you've let your second ferment sit for long enough. You also have to make sure you have it at the right temperature. If it's not warm enough as it's fermenting for that second stage, then the yeast has trouble reproducing and building up. So hopefully you can see that little bit of yeast in there. Hopefully that gives you an idea of why it's important to let it build up in your second ferment. And you can always do the shaking. If you leave them on your counter a few times a day, just give it a nice shake and let the yeast really get mixed up and get access to all that sugar that you've added so that it will eat your sugar and build up the carbonation and build up the lactic acid to make your gut really healthy. Have a fantastic day in your neck of the woods.